Thank you.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Ashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Today we are reading Canto 5, Chapter 14, The Material World as the Great Forest of Enjoyment, from verse 10 to 18. Text 10. The conditioned soul sometimes personally appreciates the futility of sense enjoyment in the material world, and he sometimes considers material enjoyment to be full of miseries. However, due to his strong bodily conception, his memory is destroyed, and again he runs after material enjoyment, just as an animal runs after a mirage in the desert. Text 8, text 11. Sometimes the conditioned soul is very aggrieved by the chastisement of his enemies and government servants who use harsh words against him directly or indirectly. At that time, his heart and ears become very saddened. Such chastisement may be compared to the sound of the owls and crickets. Text 12. Text 12. Due to his pious activities in previous lives, the conditioned soul attains material facilities in this life, but when they are finished, it takes shelter of wealth and riches which cannot help him in this life or the next. Because of this, he approaches the living dead who possess these things. Such people are compared to impure trees, creepers, and poisonous wells. Text 11, text 13. Sometimes, to mitigate the distresses in this forest of material world, the conditioned soul receives cheap blessings from atheists. He then loses all intelligence in their association. This is exactly like jumping in a shallow river. As a result, one simply breaks his head. He is not able to mitigate his sufferings from the heat, and in both ways, he suffers. The misguided conditioned soul also approaches so-called sadhus and swamis who preach against the principles of the Vedas. He does not receive benefit from them either in the present or in the future. Text 14. In this material world, when the conditioned soul cannot arrange for his own maintenance despite exploiting others, he tries to exploit his own father or son, taking away that relatives' possessions, although they may be very insignificant. If he cannot acquire things from his father, son, or other relatives, he is prepared to give them all kinds of trouble. Text 15. In this world, the family life is exactly like blazing fire in the forest. There is not the least happiness, and gradually one becomes more and more implicated in unhappiness. In household life, there is nothing favorable for perpetual happiness. Being implicated in home life, the conditioned soul is burned by fire of lamentation. Sometimes he condemns himself as being very unfortunate, and sometimes he claims that he suffers because he performed no pious activities in his previous lives. Text 16. Government men are always like carnivorous demons called Rakshasas, man-eaters. Sometimes these government men turn against the conditioned soul and take away all his accumulated wealth. Being bereft of his life's reserved wealth, the conditioned soul loses all enthusiasm. Indeed, it is as though he loses his life. Text 17. Sometimes the conditioned soul imagines that his father or grandfather has again come in the form of his son or grandson. In this way, he feels the happiness one sometimes feels in a dream, and the conditioned soul sometimes takes pleasure in such mental concoctions. Text 18. In household life, one is ordered to execute many yagnas and fruitive activities, especially the Vivaha Yagna, the marriage ceremony for sons and daughters. and the sacred thread ceremony. These are all duties of a Gruhastha, and they are very extensive and troublesome to execute. They are compared to a big hill over which one must cross when one is attached to material activities. A person desiring to cross over these ritualistic ceremonies certainly feels pains like the piercing of thorns and pebbles endured by one attempting to climb a hill. Thus, the conditioned soul suffers unlimitedly. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept our humble obeisances. All wish to Srila Prabhupada. Please take over the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mataji. Are you able to hear, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pradeep Prabhuji, for reading today's Bhagavatam section translations, slokas translation. And thank you all for joining for today's session. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, the material world as the greatest forest of enjoyment, slokas 10 to 18. So we'll start with prayers. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुर्वन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणी। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So we are in the section of Jadabharata, enlightening King Ravana with the spiritual knowledge. So in the last chapter, we heard how Jadabharata, in a theoretical manner, gave the forest of the material world, and he also mentioned various animals, how they trouble us, like there are plunders like thieves and rogues as compared to the six senses, and there are carnivorous animals like jackals and wolves and lions, so compared to the wife, children and relatives like that who suck the blood. So like that, so there are various animals and troubles in the forest life. How it is explained in the last chapter by Jadabharata to King Raguna. So, so in this chapter, Parikshit Maharaj asked to explain the deeper meaning of that, or the direct meaning of that forest of material existence. And Sukadeva Goswami is giving the explanation. And the last session, we saw that how the conditioned soul, being greedy, so he gives up the service of the Lord in the spiritual world and wanted to enjoy independent of Krishna. So he wanted to come into this material world, and of course Krishna very mercifully gives the chance to enter into this material world. And this is how the pure spirit soul falls down into this material world. And then once he comes into this material world, so he is influenced by the three modes, Sattva, Raja, Tamo, Guna, and then he performs various actions, and due to that he will take different types of bodies, so different types of species. Sometimes he could be a demigod, sometimes he could be an animal, sometimes he could be an insignificant creature in the lower planet system, like that. So he goes through this cycle of birth and death. So only when he gets the mercy of a Vaishnava, then only he can get out of this clutches of Maya. So then he explains how these senses are compared to the rogues and thieves, because they take away the man's real knowledge. And then Sukadeva Goswami explains how the family members are like ferocious animals. Like the ferocious animals suck the blood of the man. So similarly, the family members also, they suck the blood of the man, taking away his wealth or like that. And then he also talks about how even though there are so many challenges and problems, but the man is entangled and he is forced to act in this material world. So his all his actions are witnessed by the sun, moon, or demigods like that. But sometimes he thinks that so no one is looking at like that. And today we'll continue from slokas 10 to 18. And in the 10th sloka, we see that conditioned soul, sometimes he feels, appreciates the futility, sense enjoyment, and sometimes he sees that he's full of miseries. And in one place, Prabhupada gives analogy like, this in this material world, there is no real happiness because it's a dukkha. So, and he gives the analogy like, the happiness in this material world is called the absence of misery. So it's like when sometimes the jailer he takes the prisoner to a big water tank, and the punishment they give is like, they push the head of the prisoner into that water tank. So then the prisoner will suffocate and he will feel great misery. So, and then after a few moments, then the jailer will take the head out of the water. Then he will feel relieved. So again, they will push into that water. And then again, he will feel the so much misery or trouble, suffering. So it's like that in this material world. Like, everyone goes through the constant miserable life. But once in a while in the middle, we get that relievedness from the misery. So that's considered as a happiness in this material world. And then says that our duty is strong bodily conception, memory is destroyed, and he again runs after the material enjoyment. And Prabhupada mentions that this is the disease, like the bodily conception. So even though the conditioned souls in this material world is failing again and again to get the temporary happiness, the enjoyment, but he tries again and again. So, and only by the association of the devotees, so one can at least could understand a little bit in the initial. Even though he is convinced, but he still cannot give up that engagement or the engaging in the material activities or sense gratification. But as he progresses and he comes to a stage, he is not able to come out from that material enjoyment. And sometimes Krishna, he sees that, it's a special favor. Sometimes Krishna gives a special favor onto the very dedicated, sincere devotee, that he takes away all his material opulences. And Prabhupada mentions that yasyaham anugrahami harishya taddanam sanai, like he takes away everything. So then, because he is failing again and again in that helpless condition, so he surrenders to the Supreme Lord. Then the Lord gives him directions, and then the devotee will follow the directions, and then he forgets all material entanglement and then attains the happiness. But until that time, he tries again and again and again. So unless he is fed up with the distressed with the material life, then he will not come to the dedicated spiritual life. Excuse me. So in the text 11, so we see that sometimes the conditioned soul is very aggrieved by chastisement of his enemies and government service, and use harsh words against him directly or indirectly. And because of this, his heart and ears become very sad. So, and this is compared with the sounds of owls and crickets in the forest. And Prabhupada mentions that in this material world, we have many enemies. So even for, of course, as Kali Yuga progress, so even with the small kind of uncomfortable or dispute, so one become enemy. So, and he tries to cause trouble for us. So, and due to that, we go through so much suffering. So, and then there is a government servants. And when they become opposite to you, then they will grab everything. They will trouble a lot. And even the government, so they, in this Kali Yuga, it is said that they will put so many taxes on, like, so many taxes, and you cannot counteract, and you have to do it. So you cannot do anything like that. In the text 12, And due to his pious activities in previous life, the conditions will attain material facilities in this life. So based on our previous actions, so if they are pious, if we have a good karma in our account, then based on that we will get some material appliances. Could be wealth or good position, name and fame, or beauty, or good education, like that. We get that. But if we misuse that for our own sense gratification, then we again go through the cycle of birth and death. That is compared to the enjoying the poisonous trees. So it's enjoying the fruits of poisonous trees. So that would only harm us. So they will not help us. So that's why when whatever the results that we get because of the good karma, so if we enjoy for our own sense gratification, then we will not get any help either in this life or next life. And one time, I think one rich person was interviewed by a reporter. So he asked, what would you ask if God appears in front of you now? So then he asked, he told that, he will request God to give a one moment of happiness. That means even though he is very rich, because he is not connected to Krishna consciousness, so he is continuously, constantly going through challenges and problems, and that is giving only unhappiness to him. So he's not feeling happiness. So unless we connect that to the Krishna consciousness, then we will not have any help with those pious activities. So if we engage in the Krishna consciousness, whatever the pious results that we get in the service of Krishna, then we will attain happiness in this life and also in the next life. And once we become pure enough, then we go back to Godhead, and we will have constant happiness with that. So that's why Krishna mentions that whatever you do in this life, you connect to the spiritual activities, Krishna conscious activities. So he says in Bhagavad Gita, Yat karoshi, yat asnasi, yat juhoshi, dadasi, yat. So that sloka Prabhupada quotes, whatever you do, whatever you eat, so you offer it to Krishna, and then you take it as a prasada. So like that, you perform that in this life, then you will attain happiness, and that will continue. And that's what we see in the life of the great personalities, the great, very exalted devotees. And we hear this same thing in the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj also. So whatever the pious results that he is getting, so he uses in the service of Krishna, connects to the Krishna consciousness. And to avoid the sinful reactions, he performs the voluntary austerity. So he takes up the voluntary austerity, like waking up early, chanting like in our case. So to avoid the sinful reactions, what we have, to avoid those things, instead of suffering those sinful reactions, to avoid them, if we can take the voluntary austerities, like waking up early and chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra as prescribed by Acharyas, like 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, follow 4 regulative principles. So these kind of voluntary austerities, like on special days like Ekadasi or festivals, if we do more Krishna conscious activities as austerity, if we can do it, so then we can escape from the sinful reactions, because one sinful reactions will cause great havoc in our life. So if we could do that, then we can avoid those sinful reactions. And whatever the pious results that we are getting in this life, if we connect them to Krishna consciousness, then we will attain happiness. Otherwise, it will not help anything. And then that's what it says, it cannot help. So that's why they are like compared to the impure trees, creepers, and poisonous wells. And then text 13 is that sometimes to mitigate this distress of this forest material world, so what the conditioned soul does is, so he gets cheap blessings from atheists. So then he loses all intelligence in their association. And this is compared exactly like jumping in a shallow river. And the result is simply breaks his head. And Prabhupada mentions that in this material world, so there are cheaters in the disguise of the sadhus or so-called spiritual leaders. And people wanted to be cheated, so they, to get some material benefit, what the conditioned soul does sometimes, some of them, so they approach these cheating sadhus or pseudo sannyasis to get cheap blessings, so that they think that they will receive some material benefit. But they don't understand that that would not help them. Like, so in the, if I remember correctly, in the Journey Home book, so His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj mentions that, when he was looking for the spiritual knowledge, trying to understand, when he came to the area of Nepal, I believe it is Nepal. So he's wandering here and there. So he saw one, there is a big line, and one sadhu is sitting, and everybody is going to him and giving some donation and getting blessings. And Maharaj also stands in the line, and then when Maharaj comes to closer to that person, so that person gives blessings, and he asks him to sit, because he saw that this is the white person, so he's not from in the eastern region of the world, so he must be coming from west. So then when all the people's blessings are completed, so then this person asked Maharaj, where did you came from? So he told that he is coming from America. He came from America, so looking for some spiritual relation, knowledge and understanding like that. Then he told, why did you came from all the way from America? America is a very comfortable place with so many material opulences, luxuries like that. Actually, he says that, I am planning to come to America to get those facilities. So I am acquiring money like this. And then once I get enough money, I'll go to the America and then enjoy those material facilities. So like that, there will be some cheating sadhus. So if one approaches those cheating sadhus, then there will not be any help. So that's why it is very important to be connected to a bona fide guru or bona fide sampradayas. And Prabhupada mentions that in this Kali Yuga, there are many cheaters. So we'll use some jugglery words or some magics like that. So they will simply looking your money, takes the money, and then they, whatever the blessings they would give, so-called blessings will not help. So I heard some time back, there is one person in somewhere, I think in Tamil Nadu like that. So he claims himself as the Kalki Bhagavan. And Kalki Bhagavan is mentioned in the scriptures that he will come at the end of the Kali Yuga. But here he claims himself as a Kalki Bhagavan. And some or other, he influenced people to become famous. And then when people goes to him, so to get an appointment, so he will charge like 50,000 rupees like that. And then he will give some blessings like that. And people think that, hoping that, his blessings would help them to get some material benefits or some, whatever the diseases that they have, it will be cured like that. So, but those things will not help. So that's why one should approach a bona fide guru. And Prabhupada mentions that bona fide guru is samsara davana nalaviru loka tranaya karunya ghana ganatam. Like, he will help, that bona fide guru will help us to deliver from this materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. So with his mercy and inspiration, so we will be able to come out from this blazing fire of the material world. So, and then Prabhupada mentions that so the gurus who will use the manufacture some gold or juggle words, so they will not, they are compared as sabde pare cha nisthanam. Like, such gurus do not manufacture. So any they don't follow proper Vedic literatures like that. Sometimes Prabhupada was asked, like, to show some magic sticks, and Prabhupada mentions that, what better magic can be. I can show, like, these hippies. I mean, he shows his disciples saying that, they were hippies earlier, and now they are following this process of Krishna consciousness, and their heart has been changed and became happy like that. So when one connects to the bona fide Guru, then their life will become successful. Otherwise, they will continue, they will fail again and again, and they will continue in this material world. In the text 14, so you see this, the conditioned soul. So when he cannot arrange his own maintenance, then what he does is he's exploit his own father or sons, and he wants to take away the relatives' positions. If he cannot acquire things from father or son like that, he prepared to give them all kinds of troubles. And Prabhupada mentions that in the purport, actually he saw one of the case, like, one distressed man who is looking for some wealth. So he stole the ornaments of his own daughter only, just to maintain himself. So, and as Kali Yuga progresses, I think this is becoming very common, am I right? So, to get the parents' wealth, the brothers and sister will fight, when they are sharing, like, now they will fight it, like who wants to get what and like that. And sometimes the fighting happens when the parents are alive, and sometimes when they left the world, like that. So this troubling the relatives or the close members is something that is happening now, like that. And in some cases, they wanted to get the parents' wealth very sooner. But if the parents are alive, sometimes in very rare cases, what they do is they will some or other, they will kill the parents, and they will project or they will portray that as the suicide or heart attack, something like that, so that they can immediately get their wealth, like that. So that's how, as Kali Yuga progress, that will happen, and it is happening here and there, like that. So that's what Prabhupada mentions, that without Krishna consciousness, as Kali Yuga progress, people will deteriorate further and further and further. So it will become a hellish conditions. So it is very important for us. We are in the best part of the Kali Yuga. So if we can try as best as we can to make our life successful in this lifetime, then we can escape the future hellish conditions that's going to come in the Kali Yuga. And in that sloka 15, so in this world, family life is exactly like a blazing fire in the forest, and there is not the least happiness, and gradually one becomes more implicated with unhappiness. So there is nothing favorable in the household life for happiness. So Prabhupada mentions that it's like a samsara davana, loka. So it's a blazing fire. This family life or material life is compared as the blazing fire. And in the deep forest, so no one goes to set a fire, right? Automatically, some or other, so the forest fire will happen. So similarly, in this material world also, people is trying as best as they can. They want to be happiness, but some or other, the misery is only coming. The troubles are coming. So, and they cannot get out of this entanglement. So he suffers more and more and more and more, like that. And he thinks that sometimes he claims that the suffer is because of his past life sinful activities, or he performed no pious activities. And sometimes he condemns himself as the unfortunate, like that. In the text 16, this material world, the government men are compared as the carnivorous demons called Rakshasas, man-eaters. And when these government men turn against the conditioned souls, they take away all their accumulated wealth. And due to that, the conditioned soul loses enthusiasm, and as if he loses his life. And Prabhupada mentions that so suppose a government officer becomes reverse to any person, and that person will harass like anything to this conditioned soul, and he tries to put this person into many problems, or tries to take all his wealth like that. So it will become a very challengeable life. So that's how it happens. And more apart from that, they will have so many taxes, and they will forcibly takes all the wealth of the persons in this Kali Yuga. And there is a similar statement in the Bhagavatam 12th canto also, when it is discussed about the symptoms of Kali Yuga. So the government persons are mentioned as the thieves and rogues. So because they loot the individual living entities' wealth as best as they can, like that. And in the text 17, it's mentioned that sometimes conditioned soul imagines his father or grandfather again coming. So in this way, he feels happiness. Sometimes he feels in dream. Sometimes takes pleasure in such mental concotations. And Prabhupada mentions that this is due to the ignorance. So the conditioned souls imagines many things. So he thinks that the parents, his father and mother, appeared again like that. So it could be, but many times they think like that. And Prabhupada mentions that all the family members, relatives, compares like that in the flowing river. So these straws, sometimes they come together, and in the same flowing river, they will separate these straws. So similarly, in this material world, in due course of time, what happens is the one conditioned living entity, so they will come along with many other living entities, like in the form of friends, relatives, family members, colleagues, like that. But in due course of time, what happens is, as the straws are separated by the flowing river water, so they will all be separated. If we look at ourselves also, when we are very small age, so we probably have a different set of friends, and now we may have a different set of friends, like all of them are separated. But sometimes the conditions will imagine themselves that their father or grandfather came in the form of their sons or grandsons, like that, and then they feel happy. So that kind of mental concotations, sometimes they go through it. In the text 18, the last sloka of that today, in the household life, the other thing is, has to execute many yajnas, samskaras. They have to perform many samskaras, duty activities. And out of them, especially Vivaha Yajna is the very expensive and the sacred thread ceremony. So there are so many ceremonies, samskaras, that Grihastha should go through it or perform to their sons and daughters. And many of them are very expensive. And one should perform these things to keep his social status in the society. So otherwise, people may not give good respect like that. Of course, these festivals and ceremonies might be different region to region or country to country, but we see in India, like, to perform this Vivaha Yajna for the son or daughter, especially daughter. So they have to spend a lot of money. So it's very difficult process. So that's why here it is said it is extensive and troublesome to execute it. So that's why Prahlad Maharaj says that the family life is with so many thorns and pebbles hurting the feet. So he advises Hitvatma patam gruham andakupam vanam gatoyat dharim ashrayate, like to leave the home and then go to the forest to execute spiritual life. So if at all one falls in this dark well, then their life will be lost. Even you try as best as you can come out, it becomes very difficult. Of course, Prabhupada suggests it is better to have the brahmacharya life to continue it. As Kali Yuga progress, it may be very difficult for many of the people to stay as a brahmachari for lifelong due to the strong attraction to the opposite gender. But Mahaprabhu is very merciful. So he mentioned that, sthane sthiti shrutigatam tanuvan manobhihi. Like, we can stay at whichever ashrama we are in, which is suitable for us. But one must continue to fight with Maya with all our strength. So with the process that was given by Srila Prabhupada, like, chanting 16 rounds or following 4 regulative principles like that. So that means which we have to mold all our activities centered with Krishna consciousness. Then we can make our life successful being in the Grihastha family also. So otherwise there is no much helpful. Like, all our activities, whatever the time we spend or energy, that will be waste of time. So that's what Bhagavatam says. Dharma sanustita pumsam Visvaksena Katasuya Notpade Dhiratam Shramayevahi Kevala. So, like, if we, whatever the activities that we perform, in whichever ashrama or varna we are, so if those activities doesn't help us to progress in Krishna consciousness, then all the time and energy, wealth, whatever we spend on those activities, so they're mentioned as simply waste of time. Shramayevahi Kevala. So that's why if we can try as best as to mold our activities centered with Krishna or perform all Krishna conscious activities as best as we can. Of course, I'm talking to myself. Then our activities will help us to come out from this material world, which is full of miserable or dukkhalaya. So I'll pause it here. Thank you all very much for giving this opportunity. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vranda ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna.